The courtroom was filled with a tense silence that felt almost heavy in the air. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting bright golden light across the wooden benches where dozens of people sat watching. At the center of the room stood an elderly man in a faded green jacket, his wrinkled hands gently holding a folded American flag. His shoulders were slightly bent with age, but his eyes held a quiet dignity. Across from him stood a young man dressed in an expensive golden blazer, his posture proud and his expression filled with anger and accusation. The rich kid's voice had just echoed through the courtroom as he pointed a finger toward the old man and shouted the word that shocked everyone: thief. In that moment, every head in the courtroom turned toward the elderly veteran as whispers spread through the crowd. No one knew that what would happen next would leave the entire courtroom speechless. Before we continue this powerful story, take a moment to support the message of kindness. If you believe that everyone deserves respect and second chances, please like this video, comment your thoughts, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel Kindness Flow. Your support helps spread stories that remind the world that compassion still exists. The old man's name was Arthur Bennett, a 78-year-old veteran who had lived a quiet life in a small town for decades. His face carried the deep lines of someone who had seen too much of life's hardship, yet his expression remained calm and gentle. Earlier that morning, Arthur had walked into a large city department store to buy a small birthday gift for his granddaughter. The store was crowded with shoppers, and the noise of conversations and music filled the air. Arthur moved slowly between the aisles, carefully examining a small toy airplane that reminded him of the stories he used to tell his granddaughter about courage and adventure. That was when things suddenly went wrong. The store owner's son, a wealthy young man named Preston Hale, noticed Arthur standing near a display case where a valuable watch had just gone missing. Preston had grown up with privilege and power, and he had learned to judge people quickly by their appearance. Seeing Arthur's worn jacket and old hat, Preston instantly assumed the worst. Without hesitation, he called security and loudly accused the elderly man of stealing the expensive watch. Arthur tried to explain that he had never even seen the watch before, but his quiet voice was drowned out by Preston's confident accusations. Within minutes, security guards escorted Arthur to the police station, and soon the case ended up in court. The news spread quickly through the town, and many people came to watch the hearing, curious about the unusual case of a wealthy accuser and an elderly veteran. As Arthur stood before the judge that afternoon, the sunlight from the windows illuminated the medals pinned carefully to his jacket. They were small symbols of a life spent serving his country. Yet Preston seemed not to notice them at all. Instead, he stood confidently, explaining to the judge how he believed Arthur had taken the watch when no one was looking. His voice was sharp, and his words carried the certainty of someone who had never been questioned in his life. Arthur listened quietly, his tired eyes fixed on the wooden floor. He had faced far worse than public humiliation during his life, but the accusation still weighed heavily on his heart. He thought about his granddaughter waiting at home and wondered how she would feel if she heard that her grandfather had been called a thief. The courtroom remained silent as the judge carefully reviewed the case. The judge, a thoughtful man named Harold Whittaker, had spent more than 20 years listening to stories of guilt and innocence. Something about Arthur's calm demeanor and the respect in his posture caught the judge's attention. He noticed the military medals and the folded flag in Arthur's hands. It was clear that this was not just an ordinary elderly man.